Hello, investors, and welcome back to Just Randy Stocks. Let's talk about Proterra and specifically the role of investor relations. What happens when you send questions in, and what responsibility do they have to respond? I also want to talk about international operations, which I see maybe getting a little bit more growth in this area and could possibly contribute, maybe not in the immediate term, maybe not this last quarter that they're about to report on, but coming up in the months, the quarters to follow in 2022. So I want to make sure, I don't think I've spent a lot of time talking about the international operations. There's a huge focus on North America operations, and I think that's where the majority of the revenue is coming from, so that makes sense. But as they expand, I think we can see these other areas expanding along with it, new partnerships. So what exactly do investor relations managers do within their department? Now, they can do a number of things, but I just found a quick article that talks about the objective, right? They are there to support the investors to make an informed decision. So use this as a tool to ask questions, and I want to give you an example of some of the questions that I sent them, and I know that there's a lot happening within the company right now, and they haven't officially responded to these questions, but I just want to share with you an example, and this does not make these right or wrong questions. Most questions that get sent into investor relations may be more financially focused, and questions about some of the paperwork or financial filings or clarification about a certain clause. So that way the IR department does provide up-to-date information about the company's operations, financial statements, and some of those things may not be completely clear, and they could prioritize research analysts rather than individual investors. So there could be a number of decisions on how they prioritize their time, but I still want to make sure that you understand this is a tool you should utilize. Now, managing communications between the company's corporate management team and the investors, they help support releasing information, handling inquiries, meetings, providing feedback to management, and crisis management. So if I take you back about 20 years, we have the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. And why is that relevant? Because heavier regulations regarding financial reporting were put into place, and this goes all the way back to the Enron scandal of 2001, where pretty much there were fake holdings and off-the-books accounting being done. So we had a share price of a company that was $90.75, and it dropped all the way to 26 cents. And as a result of these new regulations put into place, cross-functional signatures were put into place, jail time was possible for cooking the books, internal controls had to be proved and put in place, independent auditors from outside of the company had to come in and audit the results, and off-balance sheet transactions must be reported. So SEC investigations had more power to look into what wrongdoing might take place within companies. And you've probably heard a lot of these SEC investigations that happen when the wrong projections are made within a company. And then those reports are made public. So according to Wikipedia, the law was enacted as a reaction to a number of major corporate and accounting scandals, including Enron and WorldCom. So not just Enron, I believe that was really the one that tipped off that there are accounting irregularities within a larger scheme, and that's what you found as they started to do more investigations and more digging in. So this is good. This is a part of history. Now let's get straight into the numbers. Now everything that I'm about to show you is available to you to be able to make your own informed decisions. Now everything that I'm about to say is completely speculation in my opinion. I'm going to make some guesses in regards to fourth quarter and forward-looking projections and everything that they warn you about in their calls. None of this could become true, but it makes sense to me. So take it with a grain of salt. I hope this helps you out. So the first thing I wanted to look at was the operation metrics. So we've looked at this before, but if we look back at the Q4, I wanted to look at the Q4 of last year. We hit 48 buses, and that looked to be a ramp up. You really want to try and understand, is this seasonal? Like, do we have a lot of people getting sick? Do we have difficulty with shifts? And I would say 48, if that was about 50, 51 is about what we try and do, and you can see that they missed about 3 buses. I still expect that in Q4, that if as we started to ramp up, even you've seen that we started to decrease the ability to be able to execute buses if we're going from 54 to 52. So I see us hitting somewhere around 48 or 51 is going to be the projection for buses. But On the powered and the infrastructure chargers, I believe that this could potentially double, seeing that 3 lines are in serial production. We hit 78, so I'm expecting something else to come out of here. Now, if we hit 11 million in between these 2 lines, and I'm just making a guess, I'm not looking at the numbers right now. If this was 11 million for this quarter, and we were to double that to 22 million, and so all I'm saying is if my projections are that we are going to get very close, if not hit revenue. I'm going to say that that's what I believe is going to happen. But what I really want to share with you is let's take a look at the rest of the world, what's happening there, and how small that bucket is, and how it decreased. And maybe this has to do with Omicron and COVID due to the decrease. But if you look at the 2020 numbers compared to 2022, I would expect an increase in this number, especially how we have those partnerships with the European Union, Canada, Australia, and Japan. And I don't think it's getting a lot of attention by anybody that's covering this. And I hope to hear more in this Q4 earnings call about the growth outside of Canada. So the majority of this number right here, which I would say is relatively small, is coming from Canada. Now, if we scroll down just a little bit further, I want to take a look at the lines and how they're separated down here because it just helps me visualize the lines of business. So 50 million, and if we go back, 50 million is equivalent to this quarter right here. It's about 2 million that you're taking off. So 52 buses is an equivalent of, and this is just a rough estimate, $50 million. And then we've got 11 million. That's what's making up the 61 million when you combine these 2 lines. And if we go back to that 11 million, that's what I'm saying. When you look at these results, when they get released, you're going to want to see pretty much a double in these numbers. And then you're going to want to see at least 48 buses, I would say, on this line for us to be doing pretty well. But it's going to be obvious by the share price when we look at that. But right now, I believe there is the potential that they could hit their numbers. So I just wanted to flash up the articles and just show you the dates. February 19th of 2021. This was the Canada article that the business is picking up there. So that's where the majority of the business is being done. And the next one would be Europe. I believe that's the next largest market where you could see gain in revenue. And then we've got Japan. And lastly, we have Australia. So just know that as much as we think that this is just North America, there are expansion efforts outside of North America to grow the revenue. Now, having said that, I just want to go through the investor relation questions with you real quick. So here are the 9 questions that I had for investor relations. Investor presentation refresh. When are we going to receive that? Question number 1. Number 2, are we still going to miss the 5 to 10 buses? Number 3, through all of these iterations of development of a new bus, generation 1, generation 2, 3, are we doing anything to reduce the total number of parts? Since we understand this is an electric vehicle revolution, are we getting those key individuals, decision makers together to say, look, we want to reduce the total number of parts? Why do we have 2,500 unique parts? Why are we giving them so many options? The goal should be to reduce parts, time, labor, to get that cycle time from the 14 to 16 months that it is now. If they receive an order this year, they are not going to be able to see that revenue until 2023. So what are they doing to reduce that? Number 4, critical items list. If they have 2,500 individual or unique parts to every build of their bus, maybe not every single one, but if that's what they're really doing, do they have a critical items list that they're cycle counting? So do they have a separate cycle count team that goes in and says, look, the system says that we have this, so when we go in to pull that part and it's missing, I just want to make sure that the parts that they have in the system reflect the physical parts that they actually have. So number 5, batteries being secured, that's great, but are we expecting any commodities to be way hiked up, overpriced as we start to all pull on the same resources, specifically copper? Are we making any adjustments, and how are we strategically looking at gross margin encroachment as everyone's pulling on those same items? So number 6, arrivals making a lot of noise. I wanted to get their thoughts on who their biggest competitor is, and do they still have more than 50 or close to 50% of the market share. That's the whole reason that I was interested in this. There's a file that you can pull and get that information. I haven't done it. I've talked about that in a previous video. Number 7, their service repair picture. So they start building more buses than they've ever built before. 2023 to 2025, what does that look like? And do they have a backlog? Do they have metrics? When are they going to talk about, how they're going to service, repair, and provide parts? So that could be a revenue part that isn't being considered right now. So I'm not sure exactly how that works. Number 8, special cost reduction measures. So obviously costs are going to be inflated. Inflation's high. We've got global supply chain issues. Are there any special measures in place now? Since we know it's taken so long to build a bus, there's a lot of labor inefficiencies. What are they doing as far as expedited freight, signatures, or big cost business opportunities, maybe buying stuff ahead of time? I don't like that the business has a just-in-time logistics model still, understanding that this is an EV bus revolution and they are going to need these resources. I believe higher inventory levels would be appropriate on strategic items like they did with the batteries. So the just-in-time business model for components, I believe you look at critical component items like the wiring harness or pacing items. If you've got a screw and that screw takes you 14 months to get it in, why would you not go ahead and just get a ton of those screws if you can keep those costs relatively low? So there's an overall dollar committed amount to inventory that's not going to mess the numbers up. Hopefully that mix is correct, or it's good. The last one was sufficient succession planning. And do they have any concerns around staffing these next 3 second shifts? So basically, those are my questions. They're more operationally related. They don't have to do specifically with the filings, and that could have a lot to do with why I haven't received any information back. But also, these could be cross-functional questions with changeover within the business. They might have to get some permissions, but let me know in the comments below. Once again, have you asked Investor Relations any questions? That's all I got for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.